My girlfriend called me a worthless ATM in front of 6 friends because I would not pay for a luxury beach trip she had already started planning. Everyone went quiet, and she laughed like she had only made a joke. Later that night, while she was asleep beside me, my phone showed a charge for a $1,200 travel deposit. She had used the card I had given her for household emergencies, even though I had said no twice. I did not wake her up. I just opened the account and started checking exactly what access I had allowed her to have. The charge was still pending, but the merchant name matched the resort package she had been showing everyone over dinner. I sat on the edge of the bed and looked through 3 months of transactions. Most were ordinary, but several were purchases I had trained myself not to question. A $200 dinner, an expensive clothing order, rideshares that cost more than my weekly commute. Each expense had felt too small to fight over, so I kept telling myself I was choosing peace. The travel deposit was different because I had said no clearly. What bothered me was not only the amount. It was that she had used a card I had given her for emergencies, after publicly joking that my value in the relationship was paying for things. I also knew I had helped create that expectation. Lauren had moved into my condo almost 3 years earlier. I owned it before we met, and I never added her to the title. She paid toward utilities, groceries, and shared expenses. I covered the mortgage and property costs. Then she changed jobs, and I carried more for a few months. We never fully reset the split after she started earning again. I paid for dinners, furniture, vacations, and her phone upgrade because I made more and because paying was easier than arguing. Every choice had an explanation. Together, they made me the default payer for our life. I had noticed it, I just did not want the argument that would come from naming it. Lauren still had a card tied to my personal account. I had given it to her after a highway breakdown and told her to keep it for emergencies and household purchases. I had never removed it. The next morning, I called the card company from my car before work. I did not report the charge as fraud because Lauren was an authorized user. The representative confirmed that the travel deposit had been made with her card and that more charges could go through unless I removed her access. So I did. They canceled her card number and issued me a replacement. The card company could remove her access, but they could not cancel a purchase she had made as an authorized user. The reservation had been booked under a non-refundable rate, so I was probably going to lose the $1,200. I was angry, but mostly at myself. Not because I should have caught the charge sooner, because I had given someone broad access to my credit and relied on an informal understanding instead of setting a real limit. During lunch, I opened a new checking account at the bank I already used. I changed my payroll deposit so my next check would go there. I did not empty our joint account. I added up the next month of utilities, groceries, internet, and the amount Lauren and I had agreed she would contribute. Then I left enough to cover those bills, plus a small cushion. I transferred only my remaining money. That distinction mattered to me. I was not trying to strand her. I was stopping my paycheck from becoming something she could treat as shared without asking. When I got home, Lauren was in the kitchen making pasta. She acted normal for about 2 minutes. Then she put her phone down and said, "My card got declined." I said, "I removed you as an authorized user." Her face changed immediately. "You did what?" I saw the resort deposit. She turned off the stove and said she had used the card because the price was expiring. She planned to talk me into it once I calmed down. I asked what she expected when the remaining balance came due. We would figure it out. "No, you figured I would pay it." She said I was stressed and cheap, and that couples pushed each other to enjoy life. There was some truth in that. I did overthink spending, and the trip was for both of us. None of it gave her permission to use my credit after I refused. I told her I had also moved my paycheck to a personal account. I explained that the joint account still had enough for the bills we had agreed to share. I showed her the amount and the list. She stared at me like I had handed her legal papers. "So now I have to ask you for money." "No, you have your salary. You know what I mean." I did know what she meant. She meant the difference between what she earned and what she had become used to spending. The conversation went in circles until she said, "You are punishing me for embarrassing you." I told her. The comment embarrassed me. The charge ended the trust. Most of what followed was less polished. She cried. I raised my voice once. She said I was acting like her father. I said she was acting like my money belonged to her. Neither of us apologized. I slept on the couch. The next 2 days were quiet in the way that makes a home feel smaller. Lauren went to work, came home, and stayed in the bedroom. I kept expecting her to acknowledge that using the card had been wrong. Instead, she sent me a long message while we were both at work. She said my response was financially controlling. She said removing access without warning was designed to make her dependent and afraid. She said moving my paycheck was an escalation. She asked me to restore her card while we worked things out. I read the message several times. The phrase bothered me because I did not want to dismiss it just because it made me defensive. But I had not taken her paycheck, blocked the joint account, or canceled basic bills. I had removed access to my credit and redirected my income while leaving enough for our agreed expenses. That did not make every choice kind, but I did not believe it was abuse. I replied that I would not restore the card. I also said we needed to discuss living separately. She called me immediately. This time she was not angry. She sounded scared. She said breaking up over one mistake was extreme. She said she would cancel the trip. I reminded her that the deposit was already non-refundable. She offered to pay me back in installments, then became frustrated when I asked what amount she could realistically pay. That was when I realized she did not know. She knew her salary. She knew her rent contribution. But she did not know how much of her monthly life I was covering because I had never made us sit down and calculate it. Neither had I that weekend. I went through the last year of expenses, not to build a case against her. I wanted to understand how we had gotten there. I was paying most restaurant bills, household subscriptions, her phone upgrade, several months of her car insurance, and most travel. I had also paid off a store card after she promised to stop using it. The promise lasted about 6 weeks. When I put everything together, I felt embarrassed. I had spent years telling myself I was generous when part of what I was really doing was avoiding conflict. It was easier to pay than to hear that I was unsupportive. It was easier to absorb an expense than to ask why she could afford concert tickets but not her insurance. I had treated my resentment like the price of keeping the relationship calm. Then I had acted surprised when she assumed I would keep paying. I asked Lauren to sit down with me on Sunday afternoon. I showed her a simple list of the shared bills and explained what I would continue covering while she remained in the condo. I told her I was ending the relationship. She asked if there was someone else. I said no. She asked if I had been planning this. I said I had been unhappy, but I had not planned to end it until I saw the resort charge. Then I gave her a written notice stating that she had 45 days to move out. I chose 45 days because it gave her time to find a place, collect a deposit, and make arrangements. I also wanted the date in writing because I knew verbal conversations between us were already becoming unreliable. Lauren read the page twice. Then she said, "You already had this printed." I said yes. She started crying again, but this time she did not yell. She asked where she was supposed to go. I told her I did not know, but she had friends, family, and income. I said I would not interfere with her finding a place and would be flexible about moving furniture that belonged to her. She called the notice cruel. Maybe it was cold. I still do not think it was cruel. By that evening, our friends knew. Melissa texted me first. She said Lauren had told everyone I cut her off financially and was forcing her out because she wanted a vacation. Melissa asked if that was true. I told her it was incomplete. I said Lauren used my personal card after I refused to pay for the trip, and I had given her 45 days to move. Melissa said removing access overnight sounded harsh, but using my card sounded worse. She asked whether Lauren had money for food and transportation. I said she had her salary and access to the joint account for agreed costs. Then she needs to stop saying you left her with nothing, Melissa replied. Aaron, another friend, called me technically justified but emotionally ruthless. He thought ending a 3-year living arrangement over one charge meant I had been waiting for an excuse. I had not been waiting, but the charge exposed resentment I had avoided because paying was easier than confronting it. Aaron still thought I should give her another chance. Lauren's mother called and asked whether I expected her daughter to live with strangers while I stayed comfortable in a home we had built together. I said the condo had been mine before Lauren moved in, but I knew it had become her home too. That was why I gave notice. A man does not pull money away from a woman he claims to love, she said. I asked whether Lauren had the right to use my card after I said no. People make mistakes when they feel insecure, she replied. That was as close as she came to acknowledging it. During the next few weeks, Lauren kept living in the condo. That was harder than I expected. She was mostly distant. She bought separate groceries and stopped doing household tasks she used to handle. I had to take over more than I realized. That mattered. Lauren had contributed time, care, and companionship. She had helped repaint the living room, stayed up when my dog needed surgery, and remembered my mother's birthday when I forgot. The financial boundary did not erase everything decent she had done. It changed what I was willing to trust her with. The practical consequences started quickly. Her phone payment moved to her account. She canceled subscriptions, brought lunch to work, and sold a designer bag. At first, she made sure I saw every adjustment. "Do not worry," she said once, holding up groceries. "I bought this with my own money." I stopped responding. The resort company sent notices about the remaining balance. Because the booking was in Lauren's name, she had to either provide another card or lose the reservation. Melissa decided not to go without her, and the trip fell apart. Lauren blamed me for costing everyone the discounted rate. I said nothing about the $1,200 deposit I had already lost. She made one payment toward it near the end of the month, $200. She said she would pay the rest after moving expenses. I accepted that, although I did not really believe I would see all of it. About 3 weeks into the notice period, Melissa came over while I was at work to help Lauren pack. When I got home, they were sitting at the kitchen table. Melissa asked whether we could all talk. Lauren looked exhausted. She said she wanted me to admit that changing my payroll and removing the card without warning had been meant to scare her. I said it had been meant to protect me. She said those could be the same thing. I told her I could understand why the sudden change felt frightening, especially because we had allowed money to become so uneven. I also said I would not apologize for removing access to my personal credit after she used it against my decision. Melissa asked Lauren, "Did you really think he would just pay the rest once the trip was booked?" Lauren did not answer right away. Then she said, "I thought he would be mad, but yes, that was the closest thing I got to a full admission." She still framed it as optimism. She said I usually came around. She said I often complained about costs and then paid anyway. She said she thought once I saw how excited everyone was, I would not want to be the reason the trip failed. Listening to her, I realized her assumption had not come from nowhere. I had taught her that my no was temporary. I had said no to expensive dinners, then paid. No to covering her card balance, then paid. No to another vacation, then booked it after days of tension. Every time I surrendered to avoid conflict, I made my next boundary less believable. That did not excuse what she did, but it explained why she believed she could do it. I told her I should have been honest sooner about what I was willing to carry. I was not. I let resentment build and called it generosity. I am sorry for that. Lauren asked if that meant we could try counseling. I thought about it. For a few seconds, I wanted to say yes. Not because I believed the trust was repaired, but because yes would have ended the pressure in the room. Yes would have made me seem less cold. Yes would have delayed the day she left. That was the exact habit that had got me there. I said no, not dramatically. I just said I did not want to continue the relationship. Melissa looked sad. Lauren looked furious. The conversation ended with Lauren standing up and saying, "You care more about being right than about me." I did not have a perfect response. I said I care that no means no when it is my money. She went back to packing. In the final week, Lauren found a room in a 2-bedroom apartment with a coworker. It was farther from her job than the condo and smaller than what she was used to. Her mother helped with the security deposit. We divided furniture with a few arguments. I kept the television. She took the bedroom dresser, a chair, and several kitchen items. The move took most of a Saturday. Aaron came to help her. He barely spoke to me. Melissa came too, and she was polite but tense. Nobody made a speech. Nobody announced that I had been vindicated. There was no dramatic final confrontation in the parking lot. Lauren handed me her key after the last box was loaded. She said, "I hope saving your money was worth this." I wanted to tell her it was not about the money. That would not have been entirely true. It was about the money because money was the thing she had used without permission. It was also about the insult, the expectation, the years of quiet imbalance, and the fact that I had become afraid to say no in my own relationship. So I said, "I hope you stop calling access to someone else's money love." She shook her head and left. I regretted the line almost immediately. It sounded sharper than I wanted. Maybe she regretted hers too. I do not know. After she moved out, the condo felt empty. I missed her music in the bathroom and the way she talked to my dog like he was a disappointing coworker. I also felt relief every payday when my money went into an account that was mine. Lauren paid another $150 toward the resort deposit, then stopped. I did not chase her beyond one message. Losing the rest still irritates me, but I consider it an expensive record of a lesson I should have learned earlier. Some friends stayed close to both of us. Melissa eventually told me she thought ending the relationship was probably necessary, but she still believed I handled parts of it too clinically. Aaron and I barely talk now. Lauren's mother still tells people I threw her daughter out over a vacation. That is not how I remember it. I remember sitting in the dark with a pending charge on my phone, and realizing that my girlfriend had heard me say no, then treated my answer like an obstacle she could charge through. I also remember that I had spent years making my boundaries negotiable because I was afraid of being called selfish. Lauren was wrong to call me a worthless ATM, but I had been acting like a cash machine with a guilt button. I do not do that anymore.